There are more things likely to frighten us than they are to crush us. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. I think what I like about this quote is how quietly honest it is. It doesn't deny that life can be difficult. It doesn't pretend pain isn't real. It just point out something uncomfortable, and that most of the time we're not actually being crushed. Okay, we've been frightened. Then those two things feel similar in body, but they're very different in reality. Okay, because if you look closely, at most days, nothing like catastrophic is happening. There's no disaster unfolding, no irreversible loss in that exact moment, and yet there's tension, there's pressure, there's this low grade sense of threat that follows us around. And Seneca is suggesting, the one who gave this quote, a lot of that comes from our imaginations, from what might happen, from what could go wrong, from what we are rehearsing in advance. And I notice this most is how my mind behaves when things are quiet. Okay, when there's nothing urgent demanding my attention, my mind doesn't relax. It starts scanning. It looks for future problems to solve, potential mistakes to replay, outcomes to fear, almost like it doesn't trust peace. And what's strange is how convincing it is. And like the imagined future feels real enough to trigger stress, okay, in the present. Your heart rate goes up, your body tightens, it completely shifts your mood, even though like nothing has actually happened yet. Like Seneca lived 2000 years ago, but this feels incredibly modern because we constantly exposed to hypothetical futures, new headlines, metrics, projections, worst scenarios presented as presentations. So we live in this very strange state where we always bracing, not for what's happening, but for what we think is coming. And the cause of that is subtle. It's not dramatic burnout, it's not collapse, it's just this constant background fatigue, the exhaustion of carrying problems that haven't arrived. And when Seneca says that there are most things likely to frighten us than to crush us, I think he's pointing at perspective. Most of the things we fear don't actually destroy us. They inconvenience us, they challenge us, they hurt sometimes, but they really crush us. They really like destroy us in the way our imagination suggests they will. Yet we respond them as if they already have, right? And like we pay the emotional price in advance. It's like living through something twice, once in your head and once if it actually happens in reality. And usually the imagined version is worse, obviously, because imaginations doesn't have limits. You can imagine whatever you want, and possibly the worst scenario of everything you can imagine. So for the imagination, it's definitely worse. It doesn't have like contact, it doesn't have proportions. It goes straight to extreme, right? That's what makes it so persuasive. I think this is why anxiety feels so draining. Not because you're weak, not because you can't handle life, but because you're constantly responding to threats that aren't present. Your nervous system never gets the signal that it's safe to stand down. Like what's interesting is that we really question this habit. Okay, like we treat worry as responsibility, as if anticipating pain means we've been prepared, as if suffering early somehow earns us control later. But Seneca is quietly challenging this idea. He's asking whether this habit is actually helping us or whether it's just exhausting us. Because if you really think about it, most of the things that genuinely matters in life can't be solved in advance anyways. You can't pre-live loss, you can't pre-live disappointments, you can't pre-live changes. You just arrive there and then you just feel that experience. And until then, all you're doing is spending energy on a version of reality that doesn't exist. I don't think Seneca is saying don't think about future. He's saying notice how much of your suffering is optional. Notice how much of it comes from stories you're telling yourself about what might happen. Because imagination is powerful. It can be a tool or it can quietly turn against you. And I think wisdom in this case, isn't about suppressing fear. It's about recognizing when fear is based on something real versus something rehearsed. Because when something actually happens, you deal with it, you adapt, you respond. You don't fall apart in the way in the way you have imagined before of that situation, of that experience. But the suffering you add beforehand, that's where most damage is done. So I keep coming back to this idea. Maybe it's about refusing to let your imagination run your life, about letting reality arrive before you decide how much it deserves to hurt you. And that's been on my mind.